So, this week, as part of Tuned In, we've been discussing how to have a really godly perspective on money. And so, as part of this ongoing discussion, I'm here today with Michael from Liverpool YWAM and with Daniella. Some of you will know Daniella from Voice. We're really excited to be talking about what it means to honour God with our finances. So, firstly, I want to come to Michael. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you get up to at YWAM?
Yeah, so thank you, Abby, so much for having me. As she said, I am with YWAM, which stands for Youth with a Mission in Liverpool. YWAM is a global missions movement that is based all around the world, and our motto is to know God and to make Him known. And I think that's actually incredible. And so I've been in YWAM for a total of 6 years now, 2.5 of those years here in Liverpool, which is wonderful. Um, and yeah, it's definitely an interesting city. I love it here. Every day I wake up and I'm like, this city is incredible. And right now we haven't slowed down like most of the places in Liverpool or around the UK. We partner with a local bookshop. It's called Tree of Life Christian Bookshop and Cafe, and it seeks to share the gospel of Jesus, look after those in need, and to distribute Christian literature. And that's what we've been doing. And with more lockdowns, more things happening, there are a lot of people living on the streets who are in need of provision, of food, of, what does this all mean? How do I live my life? And so most of our energy is taken up by serving as a barista in the cafe, but then doing some homeless and feeding times where we do hot food and drinks. But we also have opened the door up for different discipleship, like, people who, even in the transient lifestyle of drug addicted people to, faith-based people who struggle in different areas, we still find time to have Bible studies or life conversations, working through the little nuances of what's going on. And we have a few other people that we've gotten to know that we walk with on a discipleship, kind of like Zoom, as well as a few people who we've been able to meet in parks and have, yeah, just what does it all mean is some of the conversations that have been happening. And we've run some seminars in some schools with a lot bigger picture for the future. But yeah, that's kind of day to day. We haven't slowed down. We're serving Liverpool, and in the city center, it feels like almost every day, because there is a lot of need here. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that all sounds so awesome. So YWAM is obviously a lot bigger than just a local organisation, and I know that Daniela has some experience with this because you did a YWAM DTS. So I wondered whether you could give us a little like overview of what that was and what that looked like.
Yeah. So I took some time out on my gap year to do a DTS, and half of that looks like personal learning and development, knowing, what it looked like to be Jesus's disciple, discovering your passions and your gifts, which you can use to serve God. And you can do different types. So I did a mountain one. So I spent the first 9 weeks in Germany with international students learning about God and his character. And then the second half is what we call outreach, where we go out to nations and we tell people about this, investing in communities and praying for people and just bringing God's kingdom. Yeah.
That is so awesome. I bet you had a fab time doing that. Cool. So coming back to our topic, I want to go to Michael first. So how has your kind of personal perception of money and finances and God's provision changed over time? And has working with YWAM changed that view at all?
It definitely has. Growing up in the Christian family that I had, I still didn't fully understand what it meant to trust God until really getting on my own. And so I'm 34, and I wish I would have had a talk like this, in my late teens, early 20s would have been incredible. And even with incredible godly family that we had, I still didn't fully understand. So right before going to university, I was working a lot and literally had no time for friends. I was trying to do 40 hours of work while in my last year right before university. So it's a lot to take on as an 18-year-old, but it's all to make money. And, that's what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until going to visit my mom, who had become a missionary in Southern Africa, that my whole perspective had changed. And a lot of that changed with YWAM as well, understanding what does it mean to actually like have faith in God to provide, and to understand that every job that I had, every time bills were paid, every time that I literally had, you know, £5 in my bank accounts, but hundreds of pounds worth of bills to pay, and somehow an extra check comes in, or extra hours came in, or you know, somebody blesses with, you know, here, I'll help you fix your car for a lot cheaper, you know, all those things that come up. It was, as I got older, I started to look back and be like, wow, that had nothing to do with my effort in this job. That promotion had nothing to do with me. It all had to do with God allowing those things to happen. Um, and it was easy to be like, God, where are you, when I had no money? But then when I did make and earn and had a lot in my account, I wasn't willing to give God thanks or glory. So YWAM, when I joined YWAM, it really shifted that perspective to help me realize that everything we have, the breath in our body, from the material things to the friends and family and all these things, actually is God. It's from God. And we often forget that. And Western culture definitely says, I need to make my own way. I need to make something of myself. I need to have this career and leave something behind. I need to have all this in savings, and I need to have the white picket fence, as we say in the States, and have a house, you know, and you pursue all these materialistic things. But then you go to a place like another country like Swaziland, now Eswatini, and you see people living in mud huts and shacks, and they're the most joyful people you could ever be around. And you realize it has nothing to do with the materialistic things. Yes, those are kind of nice, and God will bless you with those when it's going to serve his purposes or to show you that he loves you. But if we forget to say thank you to him and what he's doing, it doesn't mean quite as much. And you know, there's some incredible principles that I hadn't quite had words to figure out how to articulate, but thankfully Lauren Cunningham, our founder, so little woo, with the thing. It's called Daring to Live on the Edge of Faith and Finance by Lauren Cunningham. I didn't realize my virtual background would kind of distort that. But it has, so 5 basic principles that I learned, is that you don't worry about money. The moment you worry about money is the moment you start focusing on money. And that really shifted. I started focusing on God and saw God provide as I focused on him. So seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else is handed to you, right? It's something easy to say, but you forget until you live it out. And he also, the second priority is set your priorities right. So that goes back to being Christ-centered, focused on him. Number 3, he talks about being diligent and responsible. And another incredible evangelist, Floyd McClung Jr., says that if you're responsible, if you're obedient to today's responsibilities, God will take care of the future. You don't have to worry about the future when you're responsible with what God gives you in the day, in the moment. And that also goes with don't worry about tomorrow. And 4, it also talks about investing money and see it grow and take risks with it. And that's something that I think we forget. Because the 5th one, which is my favorite, is be generous. I love being generous, and I see God provide more and more. The more generous I'm wanting, the more I'm trying to hold on to the things that I have that are mine, the more, you know, strict, and the more those become my little gods, that I'm focusing so much on keeping these things that I forget when God wants me to give, to bless with somebody else. And people talk about wanting to be more like the church in Acts, where, you know, nobody went without. Everybody who had more than enough gave to those who didn't. But we often forget that it's easy when you don't have the things that you want, but it's harder when you're the one who's meant to give those things to others. So how are we giving? How are we blessing our neighbors? And that's something I've really had to learn with our family. And what is it? It's easier for me as an individual to trust God for myself. But when it comes to looking after my wife and my 4-year-old, who you saw earlier, it changes your perspective. And then as you grow and grow and grow, and God gives you more because you're faithful with the little, then it becomes a whole different dynamic. Okay, you know, do you trust God for these little things? And then he'll give you more. But that also requires more faith, more expectancy, more, and it builds and builds and builds, but you have a peace about you. So I think, yeah, to sum it all up, like, don't worry about money. Seek God first. If you're obedient in taking job opportunities, promotions, missions, church work, going out on the streets, talking to strangers, if you are obedient, God will provide for you. You won't provide for yourself. Anything that you do have is given to you from God, even the things that you don't think are, they're from God. And we can't forget that.
So true. The principles from that book sound really good. Might have to give that a read, learn a bit more. So, yeah, going back to your DTS, Daniela, do you want to tell us a little bit about how that experience maybe changed your perspective and views on finances and money?
Yeah, I'd say I learned this in quite an extreme way. On my DTS, we found ourselves in Barcelona, and our leaders took away our debit card, our money, every form of credit cards, everything. And they asked us to get back to Freiburg in Germany, which is about 1,000 kilometers away, with €5 each, completely relying on God's provision. And I think the main thing that I've learned about God's experience is that we often want him to give us the answer, the big picture, so that we can say, right, that's my path and I'm going to go along that path. Whereas actually, God doesn't normally give us the bigger picture, but he gives us the next step because he's a relational God. I think the coolest story to explain this was one particular day when we were praying. We were like, God, where are we going? What's happening? And two of us fell asleep on a bus and had a dream that we traveled 200 kilometers overnight hitchhiking. And neither of us had any idea how we were going to do this. And so we prayed about it, and we felt like God told us to go onto this motorway, and we were like, this is ridiculous. But this pulls us aside and says, hey, you need to go here and ask for a ride to this destination. So we did do that. Ended up sleeping at a service station until God woke us up at 3 a.m. telling us that we need to go and we need to the next service station. That someone arrived, and when I say service station, I mean a pit stop in the middle of the motorway with 3 pumps. We managed to communicate to him in French, from the very little French I know, that we needed to travel. And he said, I can't take you far, I can only take you 200 kilometers. And so we sat in the box of his lorry for 200
Wow.
We arrived. Someone in Lyon offered up his house that we could stay in for the night because his girlfriend wanted him to come over to his house. And so we offered up his for us to, so we all had a bed that night. And honestly, if you'd have asked me to travel 200 kilometers in one night, spending no money, I would not have come up with that plan. And if God, yes, God told us that he would do that, but he didn't tell us to ask him how, but he asked us to ask him where next, what's the next step. And he followed through for us every time. And actually we with €5. We gained money along the way, which is ridiculous. But just the idea that God doesn't require us to know how to do it, but asks us to seek him for the next step, relational. Yeah.
That is so awesome. What a story of God's provision. Like, amazing. So, like, we've talked a little bit about what it kind of looks like to rely on God. Like, do you guys find it easy to trust God for everything? Like, how do you kind of work out the almost reconciliation between careers and kind of career focus with faith and just relying on God for provision? How do you guys find that? Michael, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So as I said, I was blessed to be in a Christian family, so not everyone has that same kind of opportunity. But it's good to hear the stories from others. And I grew up with very generous grandparents on my dad's side of the family, and he actually worked his way up, became a CEO of a major pharmaceutical company in the States, and that's how he made his living. And I once remember asking him, "How did you do it? How did you get through all those promotions and everything?" And his response, which is what I think we all need to focus on, is he goes, every promotion, everything I ever did, I would go into my new office, shut the door, close the blinds, and pray. I'd first thank God, and I'd give him the glory, and I'd say, okay, I can't do this without you. And so we often think that being a Christian or being missionaries means that you don't have money, or that you need to be the poorest of the poor, which is actually one of the greatest lies. Does that mean that you'll have all the riches? No. But, we have to remember that God is in control of where he wants us to be. But my papa only got that position because of somebody else's generosity. Somebody, he was about to drop out of school and he didn't have the money to pay for his last year or so, and his mentor goes, how much do you need? I'll cover that. And that sparked something. My papa had always been generous before that, but that sparked something in him to say, somebody's invested in me. So then as he, with every promotion, with everything, with all that he went through, he was that person that our family can look to say, wow, this is what it looks like. And he understood faith-based with career. So it is okay to have career and the nice house and these things, but that's not our focus. His focus was never that. And so as my family lives a different life, being missionaries without a career focus, and just we want to serve God, and it means traveling a little bit, it definitely took me for a loop, because I pictured the 9 to 5 working overtime. You have this set career. This is my job title. This is my occupation. And to have that completely shifted is a completely different mindset. So I've been exposed to both sides and what it looks like, and I've seen the blessings and benefits of both. But again, it's that idea that you always have to trust God. And it's when the rubber meets the road that it gets difficult. So before moving to England, I had a job, but then I lost that job. Our income got cut by about 750 pounds a month for our family. We were like, okay, God, how are we going to pay bills? Like, I don't know what to do. God provided me with a part-time job that, barely okay, like it's a little bit better. So at least I have a job. But even through that, we never went into debt. We never missed a bill payment. We never missed anything, because God provided people and opportunities to do that. And some of it was he showed me how to move funds around, or we were willing to sell whatever we could to make ends meet, and he gave us wisdom in that. So it's really when the rubber meets the road to say, okay, look, these are some of the desires of my heart that I really want this, but God, I'm going to trust you to give me our family's needs, and to provide. And that's sort of what we're going through now with YWAM Liverpool. We're trusting God to purchase a house, and we kind of, it is month to month, but we haven't seen God fail. We've been in the house for about 2 years now, and he's paying our bills, and he is the one paying our bills. And it's definitely a different mindset. And yeah, one last thing before I go, or at least hand it over to Danielle to share, is that before coming to Liverpool, and in the church that we were going to be coming from, somebody came up to me, an elder in our church, and he goes, at what point in support raising, so what percentage of support must you have before you go? And I thought, as I journeyed in YWAM and different stuff and was a part of this church, I thought that was a weird question, because God told me to go no matter what. That was the word that we got. God didn't say go if you have all the money. God didn't say go if this or if that. And so we have this mindset that we need to provide for ourselves, or we have to have that plan, just like you were talking about, Danielle. We need to know the next steps in order to go. Well, that's not the heroes of faith throughout scripture. It was go. And they were like, okay, let's go. Drop everything and follow me, is what he says to his disciples. And we need to be willing to be obedient. And that's the key, is when you focus on God and you're obedient, whether it's a career, whether it's church work, missionary, whether it's, moving to a different country, whether it's staying home and looking after your family, if God's calling you to do it, be obedient. And without a shadow of a doubt, that he will take care of you. It may be difficult. Your faith will be stretched. It will happen. Things will come up, especially in finances, as you pray through these things. And every time that our family has had a chance or been like, we want to give more in this area, something always happens that on paper it doesn't make sense. It all, without fail, a new bill will come up, the car issue or something will come up to test our faith, to say, hey, you promised you were going to give this. Are you still going to, in spite of these things? And the moment we're willing to say, yes, we are still going to give and do these things, that's when God is like, see, I know you. And there we go. I can give you more because you're willing to be faithful. And he covers all of our bills and makes everything work because that's who he is. But it will be tested, and it doesn't mean it's easy. But when you're obedient, God will look after you.
So true. So true. So as we're kind of coming towards the end, perhaps you can give us your thoughts on that, Daniella, and maybe like any practical advice you might give to any young people who are in the process of working out these things for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So I think in relation to the whole idea of being reliant on God, and how does that work with income, and how do we view careers in that lens of God provide. I think a bit like what Michael said, God calls us to things, and I think God calls us all to different careers and to different life vocations, and they'll have different incomes, and some of them will pay more, some of them will pay less, some of them will pay nothing. And I think, just like Michael was saying, that the important thing is that if God is called, then you can fully trust him that he will provide. And we seem to, I know that it can be very easy for everyone to find security in a well-paid job, whereas God says, find your security in me and I will provide the rest. And I think that is completely upside down to what the world thinks. The world is telling us to be self-sufficient, to be, if something goes wrong, make sure you've got enough to get by. But I think God says, seek me and I'll bring everything else. And so practical advice, firstly, seek God. Little decisions, I don't think there's any decision too small that he doesn't want to get involved with. And also, I think you can be open with God, like he knows already and he wants to have a relationship with you, so you can talk to him about it even though he knows your heart already, and you can be direct to him and ask him to show you how to do things in a way that you'll understand, or to hear his voice in the way that you understand. And I don't think always that we expect him to, but he always answers in time, in his own timing. He's never too late. But I'll encourage you to be open to ways speaking which maybe he hasn't before. It's like maybe through other people, through the Bible, through music. Sometimes it's just a prompting. But I want to encourage you to reach out to God, because he will have that relationship and conversation with you.
Amazing. Fab. So I think that's a good place to end, because we've covered like all the points, but I just want to say a massive thank you to you both for sharing a bit of your story and your experiences, and I'm sure that it'll be helpful and encouraging to those who are listening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Abby, for having me. Great.
Thank you.